Rain punished the city that night, hard, sideways sheets of it that turned the sidewalks into shining rivers. Neon lights blurred in puddles, taxi horns bled through thunder. The towers of Manhattan looked ghost-tall and indifferent, their glass faces streaked with water. Pedestrians hurried beneath umbrellas, clutching briefcases and take-out bags, shoulders hunched as if kindness itself were a luxury they couldn't afford to spend. At the corner of 8th and Lexington, a small figure stood barefoot on the curb, her thin coat plastered to her skin. Amira, 10 years old, clutched a torn grocery bag against her chest. The rain had already ruined the bread inside, but she didn't care. She just needed to get home to her grandmother before the thunder grew worse. A bus roared past, spraying dirty water across her legs. She blinked against it and started forward, then froze. Through the roar of the downpour came a different sound, a child crying. Faint at first, almost lost between thunderclaps. Then clearer, a whimper that tightened her chest. She turned. Across the street, beside a shuttered electronics store, a boy sat huddled beneath the glowing sign, arms wrapped around his knees, his little body shaking. Cars passed. People glanced, then looked away. The boy's hair was slick with rain, his school uniform clinging to him. One of his shoes was missing. Amira's throat closed. She called out, "Hey. You okay?" He didn't look up. Traffic hissed between them, tires slicing water, headlights flashing like quicksilver. A man in a business coat brushed past her, muttering, "Don't get involved, kid." But the sobbing didn't stop. Amira tightened her grip on the grocery bag. Her grandmother's medicine was inside, she couldn't afford to lose it. Yet each sound from that boy tore deeper than the cold. She waited for someone, anyone, to help. No one did. So she stepped off the curb. A horn blared. She darted through the light, rain slapping her face, until she reached the boy. She crouched, panting. "Hey," she said softly. "You're getting soaked. Where's your mom?" The boy looked up, eyes wide, rain and tears mixing. I don't know. I can't find my dad." His voice trembled on the word dad, as if it were something fragile that might shatter if he said it too loudly. Amira glanced around, nothing but strangers hurrying by. The city didn't stop for lost children. "Okay," she said. "What's your name?" "Ethan." "Hi, Ethan. I'm Amira." She offered a small smile. "It's gonna be okay, yeah." He nodded weakly. His lips were blue. She shrugged off her own sweater, thin, soaked, but something, and draped it over his shoulders. He clutched it. "Aren't you cold?" "A little," she admitted. "But you look colder." She set down the ruined groceries and scanned the street. "We need somewhere dry." Across the intersection, an old church stood with a flickering sign, "St. Bridget's Shelter, all welcome." A gust of wind slapped her hair across her face. She shielded her eyes. "Can you walk?" Ethan nodded, though his knees wobbled. She took his hand, it was small, icy, and together they started across the slick pavement. Halfway there, a limousine glided by, headlights washing over them. Behind its tinted glass sat a man speaking into a phone, oblivious to the scene outside. The driver barely glanced their way before the car disappeared into the night. The boy turned his head toward the retreating lights. For a moment, Amira saw recognition in his eyes, a spark of hope quickly drowned by the storm. "Was that your dad?" she asked. He hesitated, then whispered, "I think so." Her stomach twisted. The limousine was already gone. She tightened her grip on his hand. "Then we'll find him again. Promise." Another car splashed past, showering them. She shielded the boy with her arm. Around them, people muttered about irresponsible parents and street kids, stepping wide circles to avoid the puddle near their feet. No one offered an umbrella. At the church steps, Amira guided Ethan under the awning. He shivered uncontrollably, clutching a small plush lion hanging from his pocket by a keychain. Its mane was frayed, but he held it like treasure. Amira nodded toward it. "Cool toy. My dad gave it to me," Ethan said. "He says lions never get lost." She smiled faintly. "Then we'll follow the lion." Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the street. Amira looked back toward the avenue. The limousine was nowhere in sight, just the rain, endless and cold. She turned to the heavy church doors, pushed one open, and let him inside. For a moment, she paused in the doorway. The city's noise fell away behind them. Inside was only the whisper of candlelight, the smell of damp wood, the soft echo of their footsteps. Ethan exhaled a small sob of relief. Amira knelt, brushing his wet hair back. "You're safe now," she said. He looked at her, confused and grateful all at once. "You don't even know me." She smiled. "I don't need to." Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant this time, moving on. And in that quiet pause before the next drop of rain, a camera on a nearby traffic pole blinked red, recording the two small figures entering the church. Hours before the rain began, Ethan Reed had been sitting in the back seat of a black limousine, his forehead pressed against the window. The city rolled by in streaks of gold and gray, tall towers stabbing the clouds, crowds moving like tides below. He watched other kids walking home with their parents, holding hands, laughing. He looked down at the plush lion dangling from his backpack. Leo, his father had named it. "Lions never get lost," his dad once told him. "They always find their way home." But that was a long time ago, back when his father still had time for bedtime stories. In the driver's seat, Marcus, the family chauffeur, glanced at the rearview mirror. "Your dad's running late again, kiddo. Should I grab you a burger while we wait?" Ethan shook his head. "He promised he'd come this time." Marcus hesitated. "He did, didn't he?" The radio crackled with weather warnings, storm moving in from the east, heavy rainfall expected by evening. By the time the limousine pulled into the circular drive of Reed Tower, thunder had already begun to grumble in the distance. Inside the 60th floor, Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Dynamics, stood before a wall of glass. His reflection hovered over the skyline, tall, immaculate, unblinking. A boardroom full of executives waited for his approval on a new merger. "Mr. Reed," said his assistant, "Gina, your son's waiting downstairs. Shall I tell him you'll be right down?" Alexander didn't look up from the contract he was signing. "Tell Marcus to drive him home. I'll see him tonight." Gina hesitated. "It's his recital tonight." He paused briefly, a flicker of guilt, then signed anyway. "He'll understand." Outside, lightning flashed. Meanwhile, in a different corner of the same city, Amira Johnson walked home from school with her backpack half open, the zipper long broken. Her shoes squeaked with each step. She carried a grocery bag filled with rice, bread, and her grandmother's medication. Her neighborhood was a patchwork of old buildings and flickering streetlights. But she liked it. It felt honest. Inside their small apartment, Mama Jo sat knitting by the window. When Amira entered, dripping from a drizzle that had just started, the old woman smiled warmly. "Back already, sunshine?" Amira grinned. "The teacher said I draw like I'm telling stories." Mama Jo chuckled. "Maybe one day you'll tell a story that saves somebody." Amira set the groceries down and handed her the medicine. "This will help your cough." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "And what will help your heart, baby?" Amira tilted her head. "My heart's fine." Mama Jo's eyes softened. "You give too much away. Don't lose yourself trying to fix the world." Amira laughed. "Someone has to try." Outside, the clouds thickened. The first rumble of thunder rolled through the distance. Back at Reed Tower, Alexander stood by the window, signing his last document. Rain streaked down the glass like ink. Marcus' voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, we've got traffic building up. Roads are flooding. Should I keep him here?" Alexander frowned. "Just get him home. I'll be there soon." But soon never came. By the time Marcus tried to navigate through the storm, roads were closing. Visibility dropped to nothing. In the confusion of detours and chaos, Ethan, restless, curious, saw a bright sign for a toy store. "Wait here," he shouted, grabbing his lion. Marcus reached for him, but the boy was already out the door and into the rain. Then the city swallowed him. At the same moment, miles away, Amira and Mama Joe watched the storm intensify from their window. Lightning flashed against the rooftops. "Stay in tonight," Mama Joe said. "Storms don't like brave girls." Amira smiled. "Neither do I." She pulled on her thin coat and picked up the grocery bag. "We're out of bread. I'll be quick." Mama Joe sighed. "Don't talk to strangers." "I'll only talk to angels," Amira teased, slipping out into the rain. The door clicked shut behind her. Rain hissed down from the heavens like it had something to prove. The city blurred into streams of silver and black, umbrellas bobbing, tires slicing through puddles, neon signs trembling under the wind. Under the half-lit awning of a closed store, Amira and Ethan crouched together, small shapes in the endless rain. The boy's teeth chattered. "My dad, he said he'd come back." Amira looked down the street, empty. Just headlights flashing past, no limousine, no familiar face. "You've been waiting a long time," she said softly. Ethan's fingers tightened around the stuffed lion. "He's always busy. But he said lions never get lost." Her heart squeezed. She could see herself in his trembling faith. That same stubborn hope that the world still cared. She tried flagging a taxi. None stopped. People stared, then averted their eyes. The rain grew heavier, relentless. Her paper grocery bag began to sag in her hands, the medicine box threatening to fall out. Amira looked from the ruined bag to the boy. Two choices pressed on her chest: go home to safety, or stay and help him. Behind her, thunder cracked again, rolling across the rooftops like the sound of judgment. Her grandmother's voice echoed faintly in her head, "You give too much away. Don't lose yourself trying to fix the world." Amira exhaled, then knelt before the boy. "I'm not leaving you here," she said firmly. He looked up, startled. "But you don't even know me." "Doesn't matter. Someone has to help." The boy blinked rain from his lashes. "But why you?" Amira smiled faintly. "Because everyone else walked away." For a moment, they just stared at each other, two strangers stitched together by circumstance. Then she extended her hand. "Come on. There's a church not far from here. They help people sometimes." He hesitated, looking at her wet hand, then at the street. Finally, he reached out. When their hands touched, a car sped past, splashing a wave of muddy water across their legs, but neither moved. The small act was silent, invisible to the world, but it changed everything. Together, they stepped into the storm. Amira shielded him with her arm, guiding him carefully over the slick pavement. Every puddle was a challenge, every flash of lightning, a reminder of how small they were. Halfway down the street, Ethan stumbled. Amira caught him. "You okay?" He nodded. "You're not scared?" "Of what?" "The dark." She grinned. "Can't be scared of what you live in every day." They reached the intersection. The old church rose ahead, its cross faintly glowing through the fog and rain. A single bell tolled in the distance, slow, solemn, like a heartbeat guiding them forward. As they climbed the steps, Amira glanced once more at the city skyline, the towering buildings, the blind windows, the cars speeding past. Someone has to help, she whispered again, as if daring the city to listen. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, light spilling over them. Inside, candlelight flickered against wet faces. Warmth. Shelter. They stepped through. Inside the church, the air was still and cool, heavy with the scent of old wood and melted wax. Candles lined the altar, their flames trembling with each distant rumble of thunder. Shadows danced across the cracked tiles, soft and gold against the damp stone walls. Amira eased the door shut behind them. The rain's roar faded, replaced by the faint hum of a hymn playing from somewhere deeper inside. "Sit here," she said, guiding Ethan to a pew near the front. His clothes were soaked through, his lips had gone pale. She rummaged through her bag, pulled out the bread she'd bought for her grandmother. It was crushed and soggy, but she tore it in half and handed him a piece. "Eat this," she urged. He stared at it. "You're giving me your food." She shrugged. "You need it more." He hesitated before taking it, hands trembling as he tore off a bite. His stomach growled loudly, and he looked embarrassed. Amira smiled. "See? Even your stomach's grateful." A small laugh escaped him, quiet and shy, but real. It filled the empty church like sunlight sneaking through a window. "Thank you," he murmured. Amira sat beside him, wringing water from her hair. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it felt like safety. She watched the candlelight shimmer on his toy lion, dangling from his hand. "Your lion's brave," she said. "He followed you through the storm." Ethan nodded, touching its frayed mane. "My dad says lions always find their way home." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "You believe that?" He hesitated, then whispered, "I used to." Something in the way he said it, quiet, broken, hit her like a whisper she'd heard before. "My mom used to say the same thing," Amira replied. "She said people can get lost too. Not just in streets, but in their hearts." He looked at her. "Where is she?" Amira's smile dimmed. "Heaven, maybe. She got sick when I was little." Ethan's eyes softened. "I'm sorry." Amira nodded. "It's okay. She still talks to me, you know. Not like talks, but, sometimes when I'm scared, I hear her voice saying, 'Keep going, baby. The world still needs you.'" Ethan's small hand fidgeted with the lion's paw. "You think the world needs me too?" She turned to him, eyes warm. "It already does. You just don't see it yet." For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the rain ease outside. The thunder had softened into distant murmurs. Candlelight flickered over their faces, painting them in gold and amber. Amira noticed his eyes growing heavy. "You should rest," she said. "I'll watch." He shook his head. "What about you?" "I'll stay right here." He hesitated, then leaned sideways until his head rested gently on her shoulder. She froze, startled, then relaxed, smiling faintly. The sound of the rain faded further, leaving only the rhythm of his breathing. Amira stared at the altar, the tall wooden cross, the wax strips frozen mid-fall, the flicker of the eternal candle. For the first time that night, she felt warmth spreading in her chest. Not just from the candlelight, from purpose. From knowing she'd done something right. Her gaze dropped to Ethan's toy lion. It lay between them now, its tiny bead eyes catching the light. She whispered softly, "See? The lion found his way home after all." Ethan stirred but didn't wake. She tucked her sweater tighter around him, humming a tune her mother once sang, slow and low, like the earth itself was rocking them to sleep. Outside, the last drops of rain slid down the church windows. The city beyond still pulsed with noise and neon, but inside this old sanctuary, there was peace, fragile, fleeting, but real. Amira let her eyes drift shut for a moment, whispering into the quiet, "You're safe now. A whisper came back, barely audible, maybe from the boy, maybe from the memory of her mother, maybe from the world itself. So are you. The candles flickered once, steadying, as if agreeing. Rain softens. Two hearts connect. The storm outside grows quiet, but the one inside the story has only begun. Morning came slow and tender. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and glistening. Sunlight spilled through the tall stained glass windows of St. Bridget's Church, painting the floor in soft colors, ruby, sapphire, gold. Dust motes floated like lazy fireflies in the new light. Amira stirred first. For a second, she didn't remember where she was, only the warmth beside her and the faint snore of a sleeping boy. Then she saw Ethan, still curled against her shoulder, his toy lion resting on his chest, and it all came back. She smiled, stretching her stiff arms. Her thin sweater hung damp and heavy, but the air inside the church was warm now. She turned her head toward the sound of soft footsteps. "Good Lord," came a familiar voice. "You brought the rain inside with you, didn't you?" Mama Joe stood at the door, wrapped in a faded shawl, her old church keys jingling at her waist. Her eyes widened when she saw the two children. "Amira Johnson, what have you done now?" Amira jumped up, nervous. "He was lost, Grandma. I couldn't just leave him in the rain." Mama Joe's face softened. She walked closer, kneeling beside the pew. Poor thing shivering. She touched Ethan's forehead gently. "This one's no street child. Look at those clothes." Ethan blinked awake, startled by the voice. "Where am I?" "You're safe, baby," Mama Joe said with her calm, honeyed tone. "You're in the Lord's house. Can't nobody hurt you here." He looked from her to Amira. "You stayed?" Amira nodded. "Told you I would." For the first time since the night before, he smiled, small, tired, but real. Mama Joe guided them to the church's small kitchen. The air smelled of fresh bread and instant coffee. A kettle hissed on the stove. Ethan sat at the wooden table, his lion in his lap, watching steam rise from a chipped mug of cocoa. Amira sat across from him, spooning sugar into her tea. "Drink up," Mama Joe said. "Storms take more than they give. You've got to put something warm back inside you." The boy sipped and sighed in contentment. "Thank you, ma'am." Mama Joe smiled. "Manners. I like you already." She glanced at Amira. "You did good, sunshine. But now we've got to find this little one's people." Amira hesitated. "What if they don't want him?" Mama Joe gave her a look, one of those grandmotherly stares that said both, "Don't test me," and, "Bless your heart." "Every child's got someone looking," she said softly. "Even if they forgot how." Ethan stared into his cocoa, voice small. "I don't think my dad remembers how." The words hit the room like a quiet bell. Amira reached across the table and nudged his lion toward him. "Then maybe he just needs help finding his way back too." Mama Joe's eyes softened. She nodded approvingly. After breakfast, Amira took Ethan to the front steps of the church. The city was bright again, sunlight glinting off puddles. Steam rose from manhole covers. Children laughed somewhere nearby. The air smelled of wet asphalt and possibility. Ethan tilted his face to the sky. "The rain's gone." Amira nodded. "Told you storms don't last forever." He looked at her curiously. "How do you know?" She smiled faintly. "Because if they did, nobody would ever see rainbows." For the first time, he laughed, an unguarded, joyful sound that made her grin back. They walked along the edge of the church courtyard. A small news van drove past, reporters filming coverage about the storm damage. One cameraman turned briefly in their direction, capturing a few seconds of footage before the van rolled on. Neither child noticed. Ethan tugged at her sleeve. "Do you think my dad's looking for me?" Amira hesitated. If he's anything like you, then yeah. Probably everywhere. He looked thoughtful. I don't think he knows where to start. Amira crouched to his level, looking him right in the eyes. Then we'll help him. Together. He smiled. You promise? She placed a hand over her heart. I promise. The camera pans from their small hands joined together to the skyline, golden, alive, forgiving. The contrast from last night's storm to this morning's light feels like rebirth. Inside the church, Mama Jo stands by the window watching them, her expression proud and worried all at once. She murmurs to herself, for the first time, the silence doesn't feel empty. The city had found its rhythm again. Sunlight glanced off wet streets, horns honked in the distance, and somewhere far above, news helicopters traced lazy circles over Manhattan. At St. Bridget's Church, Amira and Ethan were sitting on the stone steps, sharing a paper bag of leftover rolls from the kitchen. Their laughter drifted into the street, light, unguarded, the sound of two children who'd forgotten for a moment how cruel the world could be. Across the street, unnoticed, a man with a camera zoomed in. He wasn't evil, just curious. He'd heard whispers that the missing son of billionaire Alexander Reed was still unaccounted for after last night's storm. When the search photo matched the boy sitting with a dark-skinned girl in tattered clothes, his instincts kicked in. He snapped a picture. Then another. One with Amira handing Ethan a piece of bread. Another with the boy hugging her tightly. From a distance, through a rain-streaked lens, compassion became suspicion. Within an hour, the photo hit social media. Homeless girl seen with missing billionaire's son. Police investigating possible abduction. It spread like wildfire. Shares, comments, outrage. By noon, news vans lined the street outside the church. Inside, Mama Jo stood frozen at the kitchen sink as a reporter's voice echoed from the TV. Breaking news, billionaire Alexander Reed's missing son may have been found in the company of an unidentified minor. Amira peeked from behind her. They're talking about Ethan. Mama Jo turned slowly, her face pale. Oh, Lord. Outside, chaos erupted. Police cruisers pulled up. Officers stepped out, scanning the crowd. Reporters shouted questions. The once quiet church now looked like a stage. Amira instinctively pulled Ethan behind her. Stay close. Flashes popped from every angle. Miss. Where did you take him? Are you aware he's the son of a billionaire? Why didn't you call the police? Amira blinked, disoriented. He was lost. I was helping him. But her voice was drowned by the noise, by the cameras, by the murmurs, by the headlines already forming, poor girl caught with rich boy. Ethan grabbed her sleeve. I don't like this, he whispered. I know, baby. It's okay. She tried to lead him back into the church, but two officers stepped forward. Ma'am, step aside. We need to secure the child. Secure? Amira repeated, confused. He's not. Then a black limousine screeched to a stop at the curb. Doors flew open. Alexander Reed stepped out. He looked nothing like the man Amira imagined. Tall, commanding, immaculate in his suit, and furious. Ethan, he shouted. The boy's face lit up. Dad. He ran toward him, relief flooding his voice. But before he could speak, Alexander scooped him up, turning a glare on Amira sharp enough to slice air. What were you doing with my son? Amira stammered, he was lost, sir. Just what? Took him off the street. His tone cracked like thunder, commanding the silence of every camera around them. Reporters leaned in, microphones rose. Ethan tugged his sleeve. She helped me, Daddy. She. But Alexander wasn't listening. His voice dropped low and hard. Do you have any idea who I am? Amira's jaw trembled. Does it matter? He blinked, caught off guard by the question, then scoffed. Of course it matters. The crowd murmured. An officer stepped forward. Sir, we can take the girl in for questioning. Do it, Alexander said without hesitation. Dad, no. Ethan cried, clutching him tighter. She saved me. Alexander ignored him, his gaze fixed coldly on the girl who had held his son when he could not. Mama Jo rushed forward from the church doorway. She didn't steal him, sir. She found him in the storm. You should be thanking her. But the cameras didn't want truth, they wanted drama. Flashes burst again. A reporter shouted, "Billionaire confronts girl accused of kidnapping his son." Amira's chest tightened. Her eyes burned. The world blurred. She whispered to herself, I didn't do anything wrong. But no one heard her. The officers guided her aside as Ethan fought against his father's hold. Daddy, stop. Please. She didn't hurt me. Alexander's jaw clenched. He turned to the boy, his voice low. It's okay, son. You're safe now. Ethan pulled back, furious tears in his eyes. I was safe with her. That silenced even the crowd. But Alexander turned away, shielding his face from the cameras as he carried Ethan back to the car. The door slammed, the engine roared, and the limousine disappeared into traffic, leaving behind flashing lights and whispers. Amira stood motionless on the church steps. Her wet clothes clung to her skin. The cameras turned away one by one. Mama Jo placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. Come inside, baby. Amira's voice broke. I just wanted to help. Mama Jo nodded softly. Sometimes that's what the world punishes most. The church felt heavier that night. The news vans were gone, but their noise lingered, like thunder that refused to fade. Outside, puddles shimmered under the flicker of streetlights. Inside, only silence filled the air, thick and suffocating. Amira sat in the front pew, staring at the empty space where Ethan had sat that morning. His little lion toy lay on the wooden bench, damp and lonely, forgotten in the chaos. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The small stitched eyes stared back at her, and something inside her broke. She clutched it to her chest. I didn't hurt him, she whispered, her voice small and hoarse. I was just trying to help. From the back of the church came the creak of footsteps. Mama Jo appeared, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. She sat beside Amira without a word, her presence a quiet shelter. For a long time, neither spoke. The candles near the altar flickered weakly, their light low and tired. Finally, Mama Jo said softly, you did good, baby. Even if the world don't see it yet. Tears slipped down Amira's cheeks. He looked so scared. I couldn't walk away. Mama Jo nodded slowly. That's what makes you different. You see what others refuse to. Amira wiped her eyes with her sleeve. But it doesn't matter now. They think I'm bad. Mama Jo reached over and gently tilted Amira's chin so she'd meet her eyes. Listen to me. The truth don't need to shout. It just needs to stand still long enough for the storm to pass. Amira's lip trembled. He dropped this. She held up the lion. He said lions never get lost. Mama Jo smiled sadly. Maybe he left it for you. Maybe you need it more. The girl's eyes filled again, but this time with a fragile kind of hope. She turned the toy over in her hands. Do you think I'll ever see him again? Mama Jo exhaled slowly, as if choosing each word with care. Storms have a funny way of bringing folks back together. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. Amira stared at the flickering candles. If I ever see him again, she said softly, I'll tell him thank you. Mama Jo raised an eyebrow. Thank you. For what? For proving that kindness is still worth it, Amira said. Even if it hurts. A beat of silence followed, long, heavy, beautiful. Mama Joe nodded approvingly. That's my girl. She reached over, taking Amira's hands and pressing them around the little lion. Hold on to this. When the world forgets what you've done, let this remind you who you are. The girl stared at the lion again. I'll keep it safe. Then, almost as if the words came from somewhere deeper than herself, Amira whispered the line that would define the story. You saved him once, maybe one day, it'll be his turn. Mama Joe smiled faintly. No storm lasts forever. They sat there in the soft candlelight, two souls holding on to a fragile thread of faith, one that would stretch far beyond that church, far beyond that night. The rain began again outside, light and steady, like a promise being rewritten in the language of the sky. The camera pans from Amira and Mama Joe to the church window, raindrops tracing paths down colored glass. The faint image of a lion glows in the stained pattern, symbolizing hope reborn. Days passed. But the world refused to move on. News stations replayed the same clips of Amira outside the church, frozen mid-blink, soaked in rain and fear. They never showed the part where she gave Ethan her sweater. They never showed her kindness, only the image that fit their story. Online, the comments were cruel. Where were her parents? She was probably after ransom. Typical, playing the victim. At Reed Tower, the Billionaire's PR team worked overtime. Every headline screamed about Alexander's heroic reunion with his son. Cameras captured him carrying Ethan out of the limousine that night, the picture-perfect ending the public demanded. Only one problem, Ethan wasn't smiling. In the vast penthouse overlooking the city, Ethan sat on his bed, his lion toy replaced by a new one from the company's product line, glossy, perfect, meaningless. He turned it over in his hands and whispered, "You're not the same." His father entered, phone pressed to his ear, his voice clipped and distant. "No, the story's handled. She's fine. Probably back wherever she came from." Ethan looked up. "You didn't even ask her name." Alexander paused, lowering the phone slightly. "Who?" "The girl who helped me." His father frowned. "She's not your concern, son. But she saved me." "Ethan," Alexander's tone softened for the first time, but he still couldn't meet his son's eyes. "Sometimes, doing what's right doesn't mean rewarding everyone who gets involved. The world is complicated." Ethan's voice cracked. "No, Dad. It's simple. She was kind." Before Alexander could respond, the boy stormed out, slamming his door. Outside, rain began again, gentle but steady, tapping the windows like memory refusing to leave. Back in her small apartment, Amira tried to tune out the news, but the city's voice was louder than her own. Mama Joe had fallen sick again, the stress, the cold, the endless worry. Medical bills piled up faster than the money from Amira's small cleaning job. Each night, she placed the little lion on the table and whispered, "Maybe tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. One evening, as she walked home from work, she noticed a crowd gathered near the subway entrance. Curious, she stepped closer, then froze. Posters. Dozens of them. Her face, taken from the news footage, printed under the headline. "Alleged kidnapper reappears, police seek interview." Her stomach dropped. People stared at her, whispers spreading like fire. "That's her. Didn't she take that billionaire's kid? She should be locked up." Amira's breath caught. She backed away, bumping into a wall. Her hands trembled. She ran. Through alleys, across puddles, until her legs burned. When she finally reached the church, it was empty. Dark. Closed. She fell to her knees on the steps, clutching the little lion. "Why?" she whispered to no one. "Why does it hurt to do the right thing?" Thunder rolled in answer. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching rain bead on the glass. In the reflection, he saw himself, small, lost again. His father's voice from earlier replayed in his head, "The world is complicated." He looked down at the map spread on his desk, the one he'd drawn of the city from memory. He circled a spot near the east end. St. Bridget's Church. He stood, grabbed his coat, and clutched a paper bag filled with something wrapped in tissue, the real lion keychain. The one he'd hidden, not the fake his father replaced it with. Then, quietly, he slipped out. The storm outside had grown fierce again, wild, unrestrained. Lightning slashed across the skyline. Ethan's shoes splashed through puddles as he ran. The city that looked magical from above now felt endless and cruel. He crossed the same streets where he'd once been lost. This time, he wasn't afraid, he was determined. At the church, Amira was still on the steps, drenched, shivering, whispering prayers into the thunder. "Please, just let me make it right." Then she heard it, small footsteps. "Amira?" Her head snapped up. Through the curtain of rain, Ethan emerged, soaked, trembling, but smiling. "Ethan," she gasped. "What are you doing here?" He ran to her, nearly tripping, and threw his arms around her. "I had to find you," he said between breaths. "You helped me. Now it's my turn." Amira pulled back, tears mixing with rain. "You shouldn't be here, sweetheart. Your dad doesn't understand," he interrupted. "But I do." He opened the bag and placed the little lion in her hands. "You kept me safe. So now he'll keep you safe." She looked at him, small, brave, soaked, and for the first time in days, she smiled. But then headlights flared across the street. A black car screeched to a stop. Alexander Reed stepped out, rain hammering his expensive suit. His face was pale, not angry now, but terrified. "Ethan," he shouted. "What are you doing?" Ethan turned. "Dad! You were wrong about her." Alexander froze. For a moment, time felt suspended, rain hanging midair, sound muffled by thunder. Ethan was kneeling beside Amira, clutching her hand. "She didn't take me," he said, voice trembling. "She saved me. She saved me." Amira swayed suddenly, dizzy, exhausted. She hadn't eaten in days. "Amira?" Ethan's eyes widened. She collapsed forward. Alexander lunged instinctively, catching her before she hit the ground. The little lion fell from her grasp, splashing into a puddle, the same one that reflected the boy's frightened face. Camera tilts upward, thunder cracks, lightning illuminates the billionaire kneeling in the same rain where his son once was, holding the same girl he once condemned. The symbolism is complete, the rescuer becomes the rescued. He looks down at her, stunned. "Call an ambulance," he yells. Ethan grips his arm. "Dad, please, don't let her die." Alexander meets his son's tear-filled eyes, and something inside him finally breaks. Morning broke gray and hesitant over Manhattan. The city moved slower than usual, the streets glistening under thin veils of mist. News vans lined the curb outside St. Mary's Hospital, lenses already aimed at the glass doors. Inside, Amira lay in a narrow hospital bed, pale but breathing steadily. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor filled the room, soft, fragile, alive. Beside her bed sat Ethan, his small hand gripping hers. He refused to leave, even after nurses told him he needed rest. On the other side of the glass, Alexander Reed stood motionless, watching through the reflection of his own face. The man who once owned half the skyline now couldn't look away from the little girl who had saved his son, and who he'd nearly destroyed. The door opened behind him. His assistant, Gina, entered quietly. "Sir, the media's outside. They're asking for a statement. They've seen you come here every night this week." Alexander didn't turn. His voice was quiet, low, a man humbled. I should have been here that night, not just as a father, but as a man who was supposed to know right from wrong. Gina hesitated. If you speak now, you can change the story. People will listen. He finally turned to face her, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. Then that's exactly what I'm going to do. The courtyard outside the hospital buzzed with reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones thrust forward. When the double doors opened, the crowd fell silent. Alexander Reed stepped out, no limousine, no entourage, no tailored arrogance. Just a man in a simple gray coat, his hair damp from the morning rain. He approached the podium and adjusted the microphone. A single flash went off. Then another. He looked out over the crowd, reporters, onlookers, hospital staff, even strangers who'd come to see if the rumors were true. He cleared his throat. A week ago, he began slowly, my son was lost during a storm. He was frightened, alone, and I wasn't there. His voice cracked slightly. He took a breath and continued. Someone else was. A young girl named Amira Johnson, a child who has less than most, but gave more than many ever will. The crowd murmured softly. Cameras zoomed closer. When I found my son with her, I saw what I wanted to see, not what was true. I saw a risk where there was rescue. I saw a difference where there was decency. And I judged her. He paused, lowering his head for a moment. That judgment nearly destroyed her life. A hush spread over the crowd. Reporters exchanged glances, pens froze midair. Today, he said firmly, I'm here to say I was wrong. His words hung in the air, heavy and raw. He looked toward the hospital window, toward the small silhouette of Amira in her bed, Ethan still beside her. You saved my son, he said softly, as if speaking to her through the glass. And in doing so, you saved me from myself. He straightened, turning back to the cameras. Say what you will about me, but don't you dare question her worth. She didn't take my boy. She gave him back to me, and she reminded him, and the world, that kindness still exists in places we forget to look. Flashbulbs exploded like lightning. Behind him, Ethan appeared at the hospital entrance, holding Mama Joe's hand. The boy stepped forward, chin raised. Dad, he called, voice trembling but clear, we want to show them something. Alexander looked at him, confused. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, worn lion keychain. He held it high for the cameras. She kept this safe for me. So now we're naming something after her, the Lion's Heart Foundation. The crowd murmured again, this time with warmth. Alexander nodded, moved beyond words. He leaned into the microphone one last time. Half of Reed Dynamics Community Trust will go toward rebuilding shelters, schools, and programs for children like Amira. We don't build walls anymore, we build doors. He stepped back, applause rising from the crowd, hesitant at first, then stronger, spreading like a wave. Later that day, in Amira's hospital room, the TV replayed the speech. Mama Joe sat beside the bed, smiling through tears. Hear that, sunshine? The world's finally listening. Amira stirred, her eyes fluttering open. What's happening? Ethan leaned close, grinning. He told them the truth. Everyone knows now. Amira blinked, confused, then smiled faintly. Really? Really, Ethan said. He held out the lion. You saved me once, now it's our turn. She took it weakly, smiling through her tears. Outside, the crowd's cheers faded into soft rain. The camera panned upward, through the hospital window, past the clouds, until the city lights flickered like candles in a storm. Spring came quietly that year. The storms had passed, leaving the city gentler somehow, cleaner skies, warmer streets, softer people. The skyline of Manhattan gleamed beneath the morning sun, but for once, the brightest thing wasn't made of glass or steel. It was laughter. Down in the East End, where a forgotten church once stood in ruins, a brand new building now rose from its ashes, tall enough to catch the light, humble enough to let it in. The Lion's Heart Foundation, the sign read in gold letters. Children's laughter filled the courtyard. Volunteers unloaded boxes of food and toys. Murals of lions, rainbows, and open hands covered the walls, all painted by the kids themselves. Inside, Amira Johnson stood by a table covered with art supplies, helping a group of younger children draw. Her hair was neatly braided, her smile radiant but calm. The small lion keychain hung from a string around her neck, worn but shining. Across the room, Ethan Reed was helping set up a projector for the grand opening ceremony. He was taller now, more confident, his laughter easy and warm. When he saw Amira, he waved. She waved back. Mama Jo sat nearby, wrapped in her shawl, her eyes moist with pride. "Told you, sunshine," she whispered, "no storm lasts forever." Outside, a small crowd had gathered, reporters, neighbors, local families, and even a few of the same officers who once misunderstood her. This time, their expressions were softer. Standing at the podium was Alexander Reed, no longer hiding behind polished armor. He looked like a man reborn, not from money, but from meaning. He began his speech with a quiet smile. "A year ago, a storm nearly took everything I loved. But that same storm gave me something far greater, it gave me a second chance to see the world through my son's eyes." He turned toward Amira. "This foundation isn't about charity. It's about justice, about giving back the love that should have never been taken in the first place." Applause rose softly. He gestured toward the crowd of children. "These doors will always stay open, for every lost soul, for every kid who believes no one's looking for them. Because somewhere, someone is." Inside, Amira stood quietly, watching through the window. The sunlight fell across her face. She felt a hand slip into hers, Ethan's. He whispered, "Remember when you said lions always find their way home?" She nodded, smiling. "You proved it." He grinned. "No. You did." They stepped outside together as the crowd began to clap louder. Cameras flashed, but this time, Amira didn't shrink from them. She held her head high. Alexander knelt to meet her eye level, the gesture that once defined his arrogance now reborn as humility. He said softly, "Thank you, for saving my son, and for saving the man I forgot how to be." Amira smiled. "You already thanked me. You're here. That's enough." He extended his hand. "Still, partners?" She nodded. "Partners." They shook hands, the camera catching the moment, not as scandal, but as something sacred. Music swells softly, hopeful piano and strings. Amira reading to children in the new library wing. Mama Jo teaching them how to plant flowers in the garden behind the building. Alexander fixing shelves himself instead of hiring contractors. Ethan painting a mural of a lion standing in the rain, a smaller lion cub beneath its paw. At the bottom, he writes in bright yellow paint. "You saved me once, now it's our turn." The camera lingers on the phrase before fading to sunlight. That evening, as the event ended and the crowd thinned, Amira stepped out to the sidewalk. The city glowed, orange skies, lights twinkling in puddles. A few raindrops began to fall, soft and harmless. She tilted her face upward, smiling. Ethan ran up beside her, holding an umbrella. "Still raining," he said, laughing. "Let it," she replied. "The world needs its storms." He looked at her curiously. "Why?" She turned to him, eyes warm and wise beyond her years. "Because that's how we remember the sun." The two of them stood under the umbrella, the light rain turning the street into a shimmer of color and reflection. Behind them, the glowing sign of the Lion's Heart Foundation reflected in a puddle, the words slightly distorted by ripples, yet still clear enough to read. "This isn't charity. This is justice." The camera pulls back slowly, the two small figures surrounded by the golden city, the soft rhythm of rain, and the hum of new beginnings.